We live. We live. Can everybody hear me out there? I need a yes or a no. Sign of life. Sup, ladies? Georgia says, hey, all right, what's up, everybody? This is Aaron from Aaron's Audio Corner, and this is my good buddy Steve. And we are here today to talk audio. Yeah, car audio mostly, and I guess whatever else tickles our fancy. So I had thrown out that Steve was going to be on here. If you guys don't know Steve, he is a well-accomplished car audio fanatic and competitor. And like I said, he is somebody who I call a good friend, very humble guy, very knowledgeable guy, both in installation and tuning for sound quality. So if you've got any questions for him or for both of us, feel free to ask. Hair gel related questions should be directed toward him. Mine is, I don't really have that problem. So, it is what it is. But yeah, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. And Steve, how's it going, buddy?
What's up? How's it going, my friend?
It's going good. Why don't you tell people what you've got going on behind you as an introduction?
I'm sitting right now in my private demo room, sort of my crazy lab of stuff that I test all the time. You've probably heard me talk about this before with when I go to do installs in vehicles, whether it's my own or one of my clients. I do a lot of testing in the house first with speakers so we can get an idea of what they kind of do in a better environment before we go and put them in the terrible car environment.
Right.
But so this is my wild scientist lab here. I've got some speakers I'm testing right now, some amps, all kinds of stuff floating around in here. Little shout out to the audio nuts people out there too.
Yeah.
But no, this is where I do a lot of my testing. After you put up all your data reviews, and I say, oh, I got to go try that. This is where it comes to right here.
Yeah, man. No, I remember before you got the van, or maybe right after you got the van, you were doing all sorts of crazy testing, and you were recording. Or did you even tested CD players? I think head units, and you were recording those on like a Tascam or something, and just some crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, I was curious because we've heard over the years that, you got to try this, receiver because it sounds better than this one or than that one, and so I just kind of wanted to see, what was I going to hear myself, and then what would they kind of measure like,
Right.
And so I took, I guess, about eight to 10 of the quote best CD players from old school and stuff all the way up till today, and just kind of put them all on a bench, played them through my demo system, listened to things, put them on a switcher so I could go back and forth instantly and kind of hear whatever I was hearing. And then also plug them all into an audio interface to my laptop so I could actually record and measure the outputs on them. So
yeah,
it was a fun experiment, eye-opening for me, as they usually are when I do stuff like that. What's that?
Would you do all that again?
Oh, hell no.
I figured. Yeah, that's an undertaking, man.
Yeah, I mean, just acquiring the things, to have them here in one spot to do it once is challenging enough, let alone all the time you take to do it. So
right.
It was fun though. I've done the same with amplifiers and plenty of times with all kinds of speakers. So have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, no, that's cool that you listen to them first before you put them in the car. So that way you kind of know what's going in there and what to expect. And I assume that it also gives you a good idea of when something isn't working, you say, well, it can't be the speaker because I know the speaker, has the capability to do X, Y, or Z. So.
Yeah. So what's going on behind you there? Is this is that a piano I see back there?
Yeah, that's my kid's piano. Dude, I don't play piano. I can't. Although I would have to figure out how to throw it up here. I've been playing around with trying to make my own music on I guess, I don't even know what the proper term for it is, but like music type software, some Ableton Pro, but it emulates all sorts of stuff. So I got plugins for it for some old Roland like Jupiter X and TR 808 and just all sorts of stuff. So it's really cool because I can hook my kid's Yamaha MIDI laptop up to the computer and I can play it and I can make music. So I'm trying to teach myself how to like make stuff so I can maybe do intro themes and stuff like that for the channel. And plus it's just fun. You know how I like playing with 80s music. So it's cool.
Oh, 80s music. Yeah.
Nothing else. So All right. Well, so let's just go ahead and kind of jump into some questions. Let's see here. There's a couple here. Let's see if I can figure out how to throw these up. Hey, dude, that was super easy. So here's one that somebody asks, and I'll let you take that. I'm gonna take a nap and call me on my cell phone when you're done.
Yeah. So many tricks, so many techniques. What's the best way to get sub bass up front? I get this a lot. I'm sure you probably get this a lot too, Aaron.
Yeah.
That there's a bunch of different ways, as they say, many ways to skin a cat, right?
Yep.
Same
Yeah.
thing with car audio. Some people will tell you actually physically locate the subwoofer up front. Um, in most installations, that's not really feasible, not
Right.
possible.
Yeah.
Sure, that's one way to do it. There's plenty of vehicles out there though that have subwoofers in the trunk, and you can't tell there's subwoofers in the trunk. So you can do it in either way, but I think the most important thing is you have to have the timing correct in the crossover regions between the subwoofer and the mid bass, and you also need to have the level correct as well.
Right.
That's one thing that people I think don't quite understand is when they start raising the level of the subwoofer, you're raising that output level where the mid bass and the sub come together, which kind of throws things out of whack with phase as well. So level is also very important.
Yeah, I would agree. I phase, time, phase, all that. Another thing too is like any kind of resonances, as you know, man, all that stuff. If you have a resonance pulling the subwoofer back behind you, that's an issue. If you have a hole in the response, that often tends to pull right toward where the I guess the problematic speaker is. So if you've got a hole in the subwoofer response, it tends to pull right to the back. And I don't understand why holes pull to where the phase issue is, but it's kind of like when you throw mid ranges out of phase, the sound goes to the mid ranges instead of toward the dash.
Right.
It's just a weird effect. But yeah, I would agree with you. I think a lot of times especially for new people, it's about time alignment and level matching. And if you get those two dead on, then a lot of it's just, a little bit of fine tuning and finessing from there.
Right. I mean, EQ as well. You don't want to have any
Absolutely.
specific region in that, especially in the crossover area where you've got something funky going on. So
Right.
EQ, but even if you have all that stuff right, it's not guaranteed that you're always going to get that all the way up front sensation of bass in a vehicle. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
And like you said, it could be resonances, it could be tactile feedback. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you dealt with that in
Yeah.
maybe your old Civic where everything was set up about as perfect as you could get it,
Yeah.
and you still would feel stuff in the back of the seat or in the headrest or in your feet.
Sucks. Yeah.
And those are probably the most tough things to get around.
Yeah.
Trying to make the vehicle as dead as possible, eliminating the resonances, and then making sure that your level and time alignment are as they should be is about all you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. There was something else I was thinking too, but I've already forgotten, so it probably wasn't that big of a deal. But yeah, no, I think just the level matching goes a long way. Then when you start getting into phase, like the Helix has its own variable phase all pass that you can implement. That's a big help because simply 0 or 180 isn't going to always do it. Most of the time it doesn't really do it. And then time alone, you can set something up to arrive at the same time, but it can still be out of phase. And it could be out of phase 45 degrees. So that's when you need something like that variable phase
Right.
that the Helix offers. I don't know. I mean, like Dirac, I guess will kind of fix it. Dirac. I call it Dirac. The home audio guys get on me. They say it's Dirac. I'm like, Dirac is something that Alabamians put on in their car, like a Dirac. That's Dirac. It's not Dirac. But anyway,
I say Dirac for the record.
hey, because you're saying it right. That's right, man. That's why I like you. That's why we're friends, because we speak the same language. Let's see. So that's kind of I think you and I would both agree that there's certainly more to it than that. But on a top level answer, I think that's kind of it. So then this one, elaborate on subwoofer timing, how to measure. What am I seeing here? I have to look out of the screen because my camera is covering up half of this. How to measure, dial in. I mean, off. So for the measurement part, you could use a mic and you'd have to have a loop back. But I think home can allow you to do a reference, but that's something else altogether. But you could just set it by, what's the word I'm looking? Tape measure. You could just do it by tape measure. Then it's reasonably in line, but then you still got phase issues. You gotta make sure that the phase angle is correct at the crossover point between the mid bass.
Right, right. I mean, I do it that way as well. Just doing impulse and setting it that way.
Yeah.
I also do it by ear though too.
Yeah.
If Andy's listening, cover your ears.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do that quite often. I'll use even something as simple as there's a special test track that comes with the Helix software. So
Okay.
that's one that I use. It's called subwoofer polling. That's a track I use all the time when
I
I'm
didn't know that.
tuning vehicles. I get in, I play. It basically plays like it's not like a click track, but it's similar to that in that it just plays, bass or like a bass tone,
Yeah.
and it just keeps repeating it. So
Okay.
I use that and play around with my settings until I kind of get it sounding as upfront as possible, and that
Yeah.
usually works quite well too.
Well, ironically, I actually find that it's easier to set it by ear, assuming so you got to assume that your level is, within reason, and kind of like you said, use EQ to help tame any resonances and stuff like that to help give it a smooth curve or flat line, whatever you want. Basically, as long as there's no, immediate peaks or dips in the response, especially near the crossover region. But I even use, I don't know how well you can see this or not, but it's a Signal Gen app, which Scott Babcock alerted me to a few years back, because what I used to do was just one third octave sine waves. But with the Signal Gen app on the iPhone, and I'm sure Android has it too, you can actually just go in and you can dial in the specific frequency. So I'll get the level and stuff set about where I think it should be, and then I'll go to the Signal Gen app and set the tone at the crossover. So if the crossover region is around 70 hertz, acoustic crossover, I'll set the tone for 70. I'll set it for 60, for 80, and I'll try the variable phase at different points and try to get it to the best of all, I guess, and then go with that. And usually that works quite well. And something you mentioned earlier about upfront bass, I've experienced this even in my own car. One of the previous iterations where I had subwoofers up front, was I would still get some kind of pulling to the back, because it's a car, it's an environment, so you're going to have peaks and dips in the response due to the environment itself, that you really just can't do anything about unless you put bass traps in there or something ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I've had it even aside from subwoofers. Let's just talk about mid bass for a second. So I've tuned vehicles before where the sub was completely shut off. There were mid basses in the kicks, and when I was playing mid bass only, I would get the sensation that the mid bass was coming from more the center of the vehicle than the front, even though they're mounted up front and very far forward.
Right.
So, so sometimes you just have some funky stuff happen in a vehicle, and it is what it is. I mean, it's the vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
You hope for the best. You try to treat the vehicle as well as you can, but
Yeah.
sometimes you're going to have some of those funky things happen.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, I mean, some people are able to go all out with a car, and then some people are left with, the factory locations for one reason or another. Say, for instance, you have a lease, so you got to do the best you can. So Jason Bartholomew, Dirac, he says it correctly, so that's nice.
Attaboy.
Yeah, that's
I knew
right.
I knew I liked him.
Yeah. Well, I did, but I guess I'm coming back around. Uh, just kidding, Jason. Love you. All right, let's see what else we got. What's up, Julian? So let's check out this one. Thoughts on purchasing high-end speakers amps through, what does that say? Again, I can't read. Through eBay from Austria. So me personally, nah, I don't really buy stuff like that off eBay. Me.
I
Steve,
have. Yeah.
you have?
Yes, I
How did
have.
that go? Is
I'm
it?
one of the few people who's probably been really lucky with eBay purchases over the years.
Yeah.
Um, I think I've only been screwed like once on a purchase through
Okay.
eBay, so I've been pretty lucky. But yeah, I mean, do you have to buy them through Austria? Can you get them somewhere local?
Maybe there's something special about Austria. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Austria, isn't that Dumb and Dumber? It's like nice accent, and he's like Australia, and she says no Austria, and he said put another shrimp on the Barbie. Anyway, yeah, no.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time. That's a good flick.
I actually tried to watch it recently with my daughter. She was 9 at the time. It's earlier this summer, and we got about 10 minutes in, and I was like, not yet. So we'll try again later. Do you see any on here that you want me to throw up?
See, Stormy Young says, "What kind of subwoofers do you guys like?"
What kind of sub? The ones that go boom.
Yeah, the ones who make bass.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's for me. For me personally, again, my focus is on building, competition systems for the best sound quality possible. So I want something that is quick, something that can produce plenty of bass, not have to move very far to do it. Something low distortion, and most of the systems that I'm doing are infinite baffle as well. So
Yeah.
For me, that's probably acoustic elegance is one that comes to mind that are really, really terrific for that application. There's plenty of others, obviously, but
Right.
those are some of the best, in my opinion, for that sort of application.
Yeah, I agree. When it comes to infinite baffle, whenever I get asked, it's always acoustic elegance because I've always run it and I've never had an issue with any of them, and they always work well. And so, but as far as subwoofers go, honestly, I just I buy whatever I can fit, and JL trusted brand for me, so I go with them. But there's plenty of great subwoofers out there. It's just buy what you want that fits, and try to model it and give you the output that you want. And I don't know. I don't sweat subwoofers too much because the car is so dominant, in that region that you're just trying to move air. And that's my 2 cents. And I'm a simpleton when it comes to subwoofers, I guess.
I mean, I say acoustic elegance. That's not even what's in my vehicle right now, but I do love their drivers.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I
Yeah,
mean,
you
if
can
it,
like large, big old sub. I mean, and I do too if I could fit them. But in my car, my new one, I can't. I can't do that anymore. So
yeah, I mean, if I'm doing something for just good sound on the street, not competition focused, there could be a wide range of things, like you said, Aaron. JL Audio, Stereo Integrity has a bunch of
yeah,
nice stuff. I've used theirs plenty.
dude,
Obviously, the acoustic elegance.
I used an Alpine Slim subwoofer for one of my wife's cars years ago, and I mean it was fine. It was a little slim 12-inch, and it fell off below like 40, but for what I needed it for, it was fine. So again, buy for what you need. You know. Let's see here. I'll throw Jason's up here. Talking about level. If once tuned and squared away, if using a bass knob when using that could be throwing out phasing, etc. Best to tune it right and leave it. I would say, yeah, but it's up to you. I mean, if you want to jam out on it, who's to tell you can't do it?
I mean, the better way to do it probably is to have another preset.
Yeah,
So you can have a couple of presets where you ramp up that the lower end and
right.
keep everything kind of tight still.
Yeah, especially for like I've seen people, and I've personally never done it, not because I'm opposed to it, but it's because I'll forget which setting is which. But I've seen people, that will use a SQ tune for competition, and then use a driving tune for just driving down the road. And the difference really is in the mid bass, sub bass, and the slope, how aggressive that slope is too, to help fight road noise and things like that. But I'm not opposed to it. Like I say, I've got ADD. I'll straight up forget, dude. I've got 4 settings on this mini DSP, and for some reason I chose the tune with setting 2, and it throws me for a loop because every once in a while I'll fat finger something down on the console and I'll hit one of the other presets, and they all sound similar because they're all basically the same with a little bit of a tweaking more on preset 2. But I
Right.
always get confused. I'm like, crap, which one was it? So yeah, if I were doing this for competition purposes, there'd be no way. I would never have more than one tune for that because I would just hose myself. I forgot to turn subwoofers on one time before a show.
Yeah, that's happened to me before too. Thankfully, I have very large mid basses in my kicks though, so
Yeah,
that helps hide some things from time to time.
that does help. Do you see
The
any?
other thing, the other thing you could do, Jason, is the shell filter works well too.
Yeah, yeah. The mini DSP has that too. What else we got here? Some people are flat out broke, but soldier. Oh yes. How do you run a tape measure through a trunk? I don't know, dude. Just cut the trunk out. What kind of question is that, George?
Aaron, I've got a question for
Yeah.
you
Oh
that
no.
I've heard recently, and I'd like to hear your take on it.
All right.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
I've heard, well, I'll just put it this way. Some people say that you are better off using one sub versus 2 subs because it's difficult to time the 2 subs together.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I've seen that said. I don't think that makes any sense. Especially, I mean, unless the subs are like really far apart. Unless that's really the only way you can get them to work is if you would put one like on one side of the trunk and one on the other side, then I could see an issue there with the separation. But if you've got them co-located, especially like infinite baffle subwoofers, yeah, I just run both of them because the wavelength is so long compared to the distance. Like an 80 hertz wavelength, I can't do the math in my head, but it's multiple feet long. And the distance from center to center spacing where those two subwoofers would act like one is well within that 80 hertz wavelength. So
Right. Mounted on the same baffle as
right,
close together as they can be. Wavelengths are so long, it really does not matter.
right. I agree. And if anything, one could say maybe if you had separate ones in different places, you could even use those as an array in some way. If you had one on the driver's side, the cargo area, like the little pocket in the trunk area, and then you had one on the passenger side, you could possibly theoretically use them with different time alignments or phase alignments to steer the base a little bit more. But again, it's such low frequency that I don't even think it's going to matter. Just something to consider, I guess.
Let's see what else we got here.
So do you know how to rock this thing? I think you can, if you click on it, you should be able to show somebody's question.
Oh, all right. Let's see. Let's see if this works.
Yeah.
Let me find a question here first.
Steve and I are learning together, folks. This is part of the reason I did it. I wanted to have a buddy on here who knew I'm not a professional and would make fun of me, but behind my back, not in person. So that's a true friend.
No, I'll do it right to your face too. I'll make fun of you there.
I know you will, but you don't always do that. I appreciate that. I don't even know what pump or tack and why, Nick. I'm assuming that's some kind of Fortnite thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like him asking me about pump. I don't know.
It's been too long. Okay, here we go. How about no, I guess I can't pull them up.
All right, which one?
So Camille W says optimal QTC in closed box in a car. I assume that you're talking about a subwoofer.
Probably so. Let me find that one real fast, and probably won't be able to find it anytime soon. Oh, I went way past it. Optimal QTC in a seal box in a car. I don't know, man. What do you think, Steve? 0.5, 0.7? Everybody shoots for one of the two, it seems like.
I actually like to shoot for a little lower than the 0.7 because you get so much cabin gain.
Right.
And I think you get a little bit flatter of a response.
Yeah, that's true.
With that. I think it depends on the subwoofer you're using, what its low end response is going to look like in the vehicle as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the higher the Q, the quicker the roll off, but the more peakier it is at the roll off point. So yeah, like you're saying, I mean, if it's the difference between 50 hertz and 30 hertz, then maybe you want to go with a higher Q for one over the other. But for the most part, I just shoot for around 0.5. I try to keep, my main concern is at the crossover. Like if I try to model something, I try to keep group delay low. But usually subwoofers, the FS is so low that the group delay isn't an issue until further down in frequency. And I don't even know if it's ever really an issue when you start talking about 40 hertz. Me, it's only a concern when you're bringing over another driver into it, like a mid bass. If you've got a high group delay right where you're trying to bring in a mid bass, then trying to get those two to play together probably going to be tougher.
Yes, sir. I see one from Julian Reedy as well.
Who is that guy?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Canadian name, though.
Yeah. Hey.
He says, for a beginner, what's the best advice you can give he or she when starting to plan out a build?
Dude, go for it. That's all you, buddy.
I'll tell you what my process is. And my process is kind of long and ridiculous, but I do it the way I do it for a specific reason. If it's a beginner, again, it depends on what your goal is with the system. If I'm building a competition system, then I start right here in the room. I bring whatever drivers that are ones that we're thinking about potentially using. I bring up here, I build enclosures for them. I put them in the optimal setting first so I can see what they do outside of the vehicle before I put them in the vehicle and everything kind of goes to hell. I like to get a sense of the tonal quality of the drivers before I put them in there. That's, that's me. But so yeah, I start here, then I take them out to my car or my customer's car, and I run some temporary wires across the seats and put drivers in locations where they may potentially be located in the car, and I demo there as well, to kind of see what they sound like in the vehicle, even in a temporary setting. I still think there's value that's added by doing that. So I like to take that approach. Anything you want to add in there to Aaron about how you like to
Yeah, I
start?
mean, I guess I would also consider, for a beginner, if you're trying to do sound quality, I would try to go to as many shows as you can. At least one show, a big show too, if you can. Like, come out to finals one year, although it wasn't going on. Well, no. They had finals this year, but it was not the same as it has been. But I would recommend going to a big show like finals and asking for demos, or if nothing else, a local show and asking for demos, pick people's brains. In my experience, everybody that goes to these sound quality shows have all been helpful. I've only run into a couple guys who weren't willing to give a demo for one reason or another. Usually it's because they're about to be judged. So if you come back later and ask them, you can get some feedback then. But that's a good way to get some hands-on experience, kind of get an idea of, when people say this is the best car or one of the best cars, you can get a feel for what's possible. And, you got all sorts of walks of life. You got the extreme builds like Steve's. You've got stock builds where people are running the stock radio, stock locations, and they make great sound of stereo. So I always would recommend getting out to a show, getting first-hand experience, and talking with the owners of those vehicles about their systems and kind of getting some feedback on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of where I started out too. I'm in Pennsylvania. I started out years ago at my PAP. Actually, I see some Pennsylvania people in the chat here today, so that's good stuff. But yeah, I started out at competitions up here in Pennsylvania. Dave Clues actually was putting on, and he still does occasionally, but he's a legend up in our area. He's put on some great shows over the years. A lot of respect from the competitors up here in our area, and actually, nationally too. I think he's pretty well known.
Yeah.
But I went out to one of his shows and kind of got bit by the bug there with seeing and hearing a bunch of the systems out there. And yeah, I mean, it's a great way to get some exposure to some really good sounding vehicles to kind of see what's possible. You can learn a lot. I've got a lot of long lasting relationships, friendships that, have happened over the years just through, meeting people and sharing that sort of common passion for audio. So, you get a lot more out of it even than just getting to hear some good stuff, make some good friends and learn quite a bit.
I agree. Yeah, it's always fun just to go and chit chat with like-minded folks. This one is kind of what you mentioned a minute ago: stereo subs or dual mono. I'm always going to say dual mono. I can't think of certainly in a car. I can't think of a good reason to run stereo subs.
Yeah, I mean, once you get down to the frequencies that we're talking about in a vehicle,
yeah,
you're not gonna be locating one versus the other.
Yeah, I mean, most cars are about 5 to 6 feet wide. I mean, then that's somewhere in that 300 to 400 hertz region. So really, you could probably get by with mono below 200 hertz and be fine. But you might lose some cueing here and there, especially if something's hard panned toward one side or the other. But I don't know, man. When you start getting below that 400 or 300 hertz region, stuff gets really weird really fast. I mean, you could play 300 hertz from your left door speaker and it sound like it's coming from the right side, and that's just your car. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that other than use additional speakers that share that same passband.
Yeah, I'm all about doing the mono.
Yeah,
for sure.
All about that mono. What is this one? Methods on how to widen your soundstage. I think this one's kind of easy. Phase. It's all phase. But one thing that's kind of interesting, and I've never done it myself other than just play around with it. It's never been a permanent install. But have you ever actually tried to use your side windows as your primary sound source? Meaning that I've taken like those 2-inch Aura Whispers and put them in the dash and aimed them at the side windows. and it's a trip how wide your stage can be, but it's really blurry in between because nothing is concise because you still have sound coming from, well, let's say here and then over here is the side window. So you got a speaker originating here firing that way. This is really weird looking at this like that. But all this in between is really just kind of odd. But the soundstage is a whole lot wider than where the speaker is. And in my experience in the car, you're limited in soundstage width, typically, unless you do some weird stuff, either due to the physical location of the speaker and or the physical boundaries themselves. Unless you do
Right.
more Andrew stuff and you start playing around with phase, and then you get into a whole nother league when you start messing around with phase steering and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember hearing this goes back, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years, maybe. Allie Sturkel
Yeah,
was doing the same thing in her. Um, I don't know, it was some kind of Chevy she had. I don't remember the
Monte
car.
Carlo.
Yeah, I think it might have been a Monte Carlo. So she had her tweeters up there at her A pillars, but they were both firing out at the side glass
Yeah,
that way, and it definitely presented wider than I would have expected. So there's some different tricks you can do there. Again, the physical placement is going to be like the dominating factor. As wide as you can physically place your high frequency drivers, that's going to help. Um, you can use rear fill. Rear fill does also give a sensation of a little bit more space. Um, you you'll basically feel like you have a little bit more width, but you'll definitely have more of a sense of space overall
yeah,
with some rear fill. But yeah, and then also your distance to those speakers as well. So, for example, if you have your tweeters in the dash corners and your seat is all the way up, well, now, yeah, this is kind of tricky to do,
it is
right?
weird, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
reversed.
there we go. So if I've got them up here, right, and I go further and further away, right, then the angle, my listening position angle, the further I go back, starts to decrease and decrease. So the further you position yourself back in the vehicle, the less width you're going to have, and the more, you know, I don't want to say depth because Mick Wallace might be listening.
Yeah,
I'll say the listening position to the
yeah,
front of the stage
that's right. There you go.
increases.
There you go. We're learning lessons here today.
There we go.
I absolutely agree. Well, and that's the other thing. Talking in that regard is, um, I just kind of lost my train of thought when you were talking about Mick. Made me laugh. Oh, the soundstage balance, left to right. So, in my experience, it's really hard to get a good stereo image in a car, even with time alignment, even with level matching, to where the center is at a concise place and you never have issues with it because of the angle that you are from one side relative to the other side. So let's say your driver's side, you're almost always, I don't know what, like 15, 20 degrees max from the left side speakers from your driver's side. But your right side speaker, your passenger side speakers are like, could be 50 degrees or something crazy, you know? And correcting for that imbalance is really hard. And I've even tried taking 2-inch Dayton speakers, put them in, you may remember this, when I cut holes in the headrest and I was trying to do some head related transfer function, basically taking the signal that came from the left speaker and hit the right ear. I was trying to cancel that out. So it would basically be only hitting the left ear. And it kind of worked, but not really. And it was one of those head has to be in a vice things. But when I got it kind of working right, it was actually really impressive. So, and the idea actually came from Bose. Somebody had mentioned, hey, Bose is doing something like that. And I was like, well, I'll try it that way. But yeah, I think soundstage width in a car for that reason alone is really, really freaking hard to get right and get balance from left to right because it always seems like the the side of the stage that you're on, like the left side of the driver's side, is always physically closer to you. It starts physically closer to you than the passenger side. You know, getting that
Right.
balance between those two is tough. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the challenges we face in the vehicle. We're sitting on the left side of the room. You know, we're not sitting in the center of the room. Unless your name's Chris Pate, then you're sitting in the center of the room.
Yeah. Let's see here. We missed a few. Let's see. Did you see any that you want me to throw up there?
Well, let me see.
Love it. I can answer this one real fast. Saw on your old post today. Did you ever put the? No, I did not. I don't know if I was going to put those in my door panels of my old car if I was going to try them in kicks. Probably kicks, but I never got around to doing that. No. Da, 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 da.
So since we've both been through the competition scene a lot over the years
Mhm.
and have enjoyed that and have demoed a lot of cars, what has stood out to you? Um, any particular vehicles that you've heard that you were just like, wow, this is pretty cool that this is happening in a car?
Yeah, I think you probably know the answer to that one. It's going to be Eldridge's NASCAR because that thing
Yeah.
did. Did you ever get to hear that?
No, I haven't.
Man, that thing's crazy.
We got to convince him to come back out just
I
so I can
know.
get a listen.
We'll just drive over there and hang out one day with him. I think he still got it all. I don't know. I don't think he's taken everything out, but he may have. It's been a while since I've spoken with him. That thing was nuts, man. I mean, it didn't matter which seat you were in. And honest to goodness, the passenger seat tune sounded as good or better than the majority of the best tunes that year that I heard at finals. It's just on another level. And the sound stage. I mean, it was one of the few cars where you had to sit and kind of gather your thoughts for a minute because you're not in a car. Even though you're in a car, you don't have that typical car sound where everything is. You can point, say, this is probably going to be the width. This is probably going to be the depth. Based on all these other interactions with car stereo systems you've heard. With his, it was just everything was way out there, dude. It was just crazy. I would love to.
What wasn't he doing some tricky stuff too with
Yeah,
multiple speakers
yeah.
and
He was doing some phase steering. Now he told me about it. He's not secretive about it. I just can't remember the steps. But if I recall correctly, he basically had two of the same speakers. So he had one 6.5 inch on the left, and he had another 6.5 inch. But the other one was inverted phase, and then a whole lot of time delay to I guess maybe steer that sound a little bit, but also give it more of a sense of maybe ambiance. Uh, but yeah, it was really weird. And then Kevin Keene, he and I were talking about this a while back, and I'm pretty sure we're not the only ones to do it or to mention it, but I know somebody's recently done it, I believe, and that's used like the rear field channels, but in the front, you know. So use L minus R for like a front mid range. I think he was using the Aura Whispers, and then have like a standard, basically like a 5 channel up front, you know.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Like playing around with that, I played around with the garage a long time ago, and that was neat. But I couldn't find something I wanted to stick with. That's the thing about there's a lot of things you can do in regards to phase manipulation, time delay, phase. That can do stuff to the soundstage and make it louder or not louder, but wider or deeper. It kind of gets into ambiosonics and ambiophonics, but it comes at a cost, and usually that cost is imaging focus.
So you can get some more space, but things kind of get a little out of whack.
Yeah. Things, I guess, diffuse is the best word I can think to use it. So, was Grayson doing that? I don't remember if Grayson was doing that. I know Todd did that, and I know that Allie did it, and Allie may have done it at Todd's recommendation. I don't know about Grayson though.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Grayson's. I know for sure I heard it and saw it in alleys.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that kind of stood out for me.
right. So here's one for you. You got any? You got a list, don't you? Why don't you just have a list and we'll come back to it?
I probably twice a year I probably make a new list of tracks of like 50 tracks,
Yeah,
and then I hammer through them for that half of the year.
I'm the
There's
same.
just there's so much good music out there.
I'm the same way, man. I mean, every time we go to one of Jason's meets in North Carolina, you and I both show up with different mixes, with each one, or we see each other at a show and it's a different mix than we had before. But I tend to rotate, the same stuff. And then as far as like tuning goes, I actually use a lot of pink noise type stuff. The 1/3 octave pink noise, correlated pink noise, stereolated pink noise, test tones. And then I have just a few tracks that I do a sanity check on. I usually do that when I'm helping somebody out. Somebody says, "Hey, do you mind listening to mine?" I'll throw that on there because it's more technical based, and if I feel like it's good, then I'll throw my music on there and get a feel for it. But I want to make sure technically, there's nothing standing out that's obvious that I might miss with music, just kind of listening to it.
Right. So Ronnie Baker, yeah, shout out to my buddy there. So one that I actually was turned on to from him is Brian Culbertson's Live in Vegas album. Really, really excellent live recording, really well mastered as well. There are some terrific tracks on that. So for guys out there taking notes on what tracks, definitely get yourself that album, Culbertson's Live in Vegas. You'll be happy you did.
I'll have to remember that one. Let's see, Jay. I did not hear it that year. No, that was the year it won. Did you hear it, Steve?
Nope, didn't hear that one either.
It's too many cars, man, and too many friends. That's the problem with going to these. I always say, "Oh, I got to listen to this car, this car, this car." But you see your friends you haven't seen all year. You know, you talk to them online, you see them in person. You're like, I'd rather hang out with this dude than listen to a stereo today. So
Yeah, that's one of the things. Like every year when I go to finals, I always intend to get in like 40 vehicles while I'm there, and most years I'll get in 15, maybe 20 if I'm lucky.
yeah,
Some years I'm in like 10. I always end up, in a bunch of other cars helping do this, do this, do that, listen to this, tweak that. So
right,
I never quite get as much time as I would like to getting in other people's vehicles and kind of seeing what they've been up to. But yeah, that's one of the great things about finals, being able to be there and hear some awesome sounding vehicles.
yeah, no doubt. And there's always some really good ones. Let's see, blah 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 blah. I think okay, Ron. Yeah, I remember the year that he did not win. I was really surprised, and the judges that I talked to said that the tonality was what hurt him that year. So I think some people would agree with that for sure.
You mean I can't comment on that one because I've never heard it. I mean, I've heard from most people who have listened to the vehicle that it imaged very well.
Yeah,
Um,
I think maybe, and I don't want to speak for him, but I think it's easy with what he's trying to do, which is to make his car sound incredible from both seats. It's easy to get your mind stuck in that frame of reference and not come up for air, and listen to it from the tonality perspective. So maybe that's why it wasn't on par that year tonally. But I do remember the next year, man, it was phenomenal again. But I don't remember how we did.
yeah, when we talk about two seat as well, that's interesting that you brought that up. Is I think guys like Natan and some others who really have a heavy focus in two seat.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people go to listen to vehicles like that, and they may be getting in with an expectation of one thing and maybe coming out, you know, not really 100% sure of what they heard, or expecting to hear something amazing from both seats. Two seat in a vehicle is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Um, what you can do it best is make one side sound the same as the other. I mean, that's your goal, is really to make both seats sound great but sound the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that most of the cars right now in competition who are doing two seat, they're not taking that approach.
Yeah.
Their approach is make it sound as great as I can in this one seat, and score really high here. And then what I get in the second seat, I'll probably do well tonally, but I'm not going to image well. And
Right.
when you talk to guys who are true old schoolers, two seat, that's not what you do.
Yeah.
So I hear it from all sides. The old school guys, the guys who are out competing now, who are newer to it, and I think there's some fundamental disagreements about how two seats should
Absolutely.
sound.
Yes.
Ideally, they should both sound outstanding from both seats, and they should sound the same while being outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
It's just nearly impossible to do that in a vehicle. So
Yeah.
then you're left with, do I want great tonality and imaging good on one side, or do I want to maximize my tonality while retaining the same sound and the good imaging from both seats? I
Yeah.
think that's one area where a guy like Natan just he crushes it, man. He does a fantastic job with that.
I haven't heard his car since probably 2014 finals. I think John Kaiser and I, well, I know John Kaiser and I both listened to it, but I think it was that year. And we were both like, dude, this is awesome. And from what I understand, it's gotten, better each year. So I just, another one of those instances where I need to hear this car. And then you want to just chit chat. I probably talked to him and I could have had the perfect opportunity to listen to it, but, just sitting there talking to people because you haven't seen them forever. And to me and you both, man, this is as much about friends as it is about progressing our own stereos. Because honestly, I'm at a point with my car where I'm not like I'm not hurting myself to try to make it better and better. I'm happy with it, and I go to the shows to hang out with folks now. And years ago it wasn't really like that. Mm.
Yeah. I see this question from Ruben here. Does
Yeah,
having multiple smaller subs sound better than one larger sub? Yeah. I mean, in my experience, no,
no.
I don't think it does. Um,
I think the only
it's
reason
a bit,
you would do that would be, and that would be home audio, is to spread out the room modes. But in the car, for subwoofers below like 70 hertz, 80 hertz, typically, where cabin gain takes over, it I don't know. I don't really see you being able to stagger that many subwoofers, feasibly. And you still have to deal with the problem that they all, generally speaking, the FS on an 8 is going to be higher in frequency than it is for a 15. So it really depends on what your goals are.
you beat me to that. I was just about to say that you could actually be hurting yourself by doing the smaller subwoofers because of that specifically.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I could see where somebody could say, you'd get additional gain. I mean, certainly you would smooth out the response, but I don't think it's as important to do staggered subwoofers as it would be to do staggered mid bass. But the problem with mid bass in the car is that you're reaching that 100 to 300 hertz region where you've got, I mean, my fundamental vocal is like around 110. Even if I take a recording of myself and play it back in my car and I run my subs or my mid bass behind me up to 150 hertz, I'm going to hear my voice behind me. And that's the problem you have to deal with when you talk about mid bass arrays for car audio. Now, you could specifically put one, say you had a dip at 80 hertz, kind of like my whole reason for using subwoofers up to 80s to help fill in the null on the left side or the driver's side response, and typically around 70, 80 hertz. Theoretically, you could run a mid bass, bandpass it from 70 to 90 hertz with a super steep crossover slope, and just have it fill in that null. And you could do that for multiple locations around the car. But then that becomes the point of, well, is this too much trouble? Is it really worth all the effort that I'm going through? I mean, sound quality wise, certainly, but it's going to cost you more. You're going to pay for more drivers. You're losing space. You got to pay for the amplification and the DSP channels. So I don't know. There's a certain point where you get not necessarily diminishing returns, but just is it worth it? In terms of space and money.
yeah, the money part, the real estate part, for sure. You start adding a lot of drivers, the cost ramps up.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's
But
a
also,
good question. I think that's a good question. I don't think that's one that should be shunned immediately. So
you mentioned, if you were to put them behind you and playing separate ranges, localization might come into play. So explain for some of the newer people about localization and frequency ranges where that starts to come into play and why that they should keep that in mind.
Um, well, so I guess there's a couple aspects of it. So for one would be just hearing your voice. It's kind of like blending subwoofers. Do I need a front mounted subwoofer? Or do I need a rear mounted subwoofer? And how hard is it to blend the subwoofer? They all run into the same thing. But in my experience, trying to use a drive unit, typically for me, higher than 100 hertz with a 24 dB octave. I think my kid's in the other room. 20 dB per octave slope or less is problematic. And it's because you can hear those vocals kind of pull to the rear. Even if stuff is time aligned well, you can still hear that kind of take over. That's going to be modal issues as well, but I've just never had it work out well for me. Now, like I said, if you're talking about band passing specifically on a targeted frequency, that could work. But that's going to be up to you to try to make it work and play around with it. It's something that I would like to do if I had unlimited time, unlimited budget. I certainly think it could be helpful, but I don't have unlimited much of anything anymore.
Actually, the time part, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm with you there.
Oh, I know you are. You got any other ones on here? Jason, type of music. If you listen to Dream Theater, 100% of the time, 4, 6.5, 4, 8. You could be true, man. Especially if you got like a high Q enclosure, you just get that mid bass snap at 60 hertz or something.
Yeah, Dream Theater is good stuff too. That's a good call
Yeah.
by you, Jason.
Yeah,
I was just listening to some of that the other day.
man, I haven't listened to that in a long.
Speaking of, there's another track because I know Ron Baker was asking about tracks. Here's a second one. Lines in the Sand.
Lines in the Sand.
Lines in the Sand.
There's a Belinda Carlisle track that's called "Circle in the Sand" that I like. It's not dream.
Slightly different genres there, I'd say.
Different, yeah. Let's see. Mark Brooks. I don't know who this guy is. I don't know if we should trust anything coming from him. So maybe we'll just pretend like we didn't. Let me just click off of that. I don't know Mark Brooks. I'm just kidding.
Mark Brooks.
I'm just kidding. Did you see that one?
Oh yeah. Benefits and negatives of playing front mounted mid bass down into the sub bass region.
Yeah. I think you know my position on that, but you go.
It all depends on the tune, brother.
Yeah.
It depends on the install, depends on the tune, and it depends on the drivers that you're using. Can they do it? How low should they be played? You know.
Yeah.
I mean, my vehicle is going to be a little bit different than maybe somebody else's vehicle. I have 12-inch woofers in the kick panel area of my vehicle, so and they're vented to the outside, so it's a little bit of a different scenario than someone who has, a 6.5 or a 7 in their door, or
Right.
even a 7 or an 8 in their kick. So
well, and that's a good point. I'm glad that you were talking about your car because and you and I discussed this though. I think a lot of people who know me kind of know that my take on using mid bass below like 70, 80 hertz in a car is almost pointless. And I say almost because a lot of the times you get that near side null that every stinking car seems to have, and it's around that 70, 80 hertz, and it just creates a suck out sound, and you can hear it pull right to the door panel. I mean, I can get in anybody's car, and this ain't bragging, this is just straight up. Anybody can do it once you know what to listen for. Play a couple tracks, and if it pulls the door panel, you know where they've got that mid bass crossed. You just know. You're like, oh yeah, you're running your mid bass down to 50 or 60 hertz, aren't you? Yeah, wow. It's because I hear it pulling straight to the door every time. And it's not a door resonance or anything like that. It's just the suck out in the car leads to a phase issue between the mid bass and the sub behind you or the sub to the side or whatever. And it localizes to where that sound is emanating from rather than being in phase and kind of coming from a point in between in space. So in general, I recommend that people pay attention to that. And I would generally say to cross your subwoofer into that region, assuming that your subwoofer is not going to have its own issues there. But in Steve's case, and he has actually shown me this because I was like, whatever, dude. You showed me, I don't know if you remember this, but you showed me of your car and you didn't even have a null at all on the left side. Like, I think if you did, it was like very slight and it was not somewhere where I would have expected. And I couldn't freaking comprehend that. I still don't understand what's so different. Maybe it's just the actual size of your cabin that was driving that. But so in Steve's case, heck yeah, man, run them down to 40 because you don't have an issue. You don't have, like in most people's cases, if you ran a mid bass, and I know I'm long winded here, but I'm trying to make the point, concrete. In most people's case, if you ran a mid bass down to 50 hertz and you had that null, you're going to hear it, and it's going to cause you more issues than if you ran it to 80 hertz and then use your subwoofer from 80 and below.
Yeah, and for me, like I look at the response and I try to figure out, when you put a driver in a vehicle, what sort of passband that you want to be able to play it in based on the driver's specs and what's safe to play it in and where you want to use it. But then you also need to figure out, well, how is the vehicle interacting with the response, and then do I have to adjust that passband based on nulls that I can't really fix?
Absolutely.
So yeah, absolutely. Like I would expect to see the same thing in most vehicles too. I was surprised not to see it on the left side in mine.
Yeah, still surprised.
I just got lucky, like you said. Maybe it's a dimensions thing.
It's got to be. And it makes me mad. I don't like you. I don't like you, but I don't like you for that reason.
Hey, I see a question from Mr. Michael Myers, a good friend of both of ours here.
Okay.
What's your favorite competition of the year or venue? I'll let you take that one first, and then I'll answer.
Well, I'm trying to find that question. Oh, what is my favorite competition of the year or venue? I most of the time I would say finals, but I think for me the Atlanta show, as far as competition goes, the SQology Atlanta show, other than it being freaking blazing hot, or Jason Bartholomew's North Carolina meets, those are always a great time too. And then finals after that, just because finals is everybody's so busy, and I don't want to say it's stressful, but people have got, you've got to judge this person, so you got to make sure that you're around your car and you're less free to kind of roam about, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, for me, if it's non-competition, without a doubt, Jason Bartholomew's sound quality get-togethers. He does like for you mentioned it, but for the people who don't know, at least once a year, Jason hosts at his place in North Carolina, about an hour and a half south of Greensboro.
I guess.
He does a sound quality get together, barbecue. Usually runs for at least a full day. Sometimes we spill into another day. Awesome time for people who haven't been there. Definitely get out for that. For
Yeah.
me, for competition, not even close. SVR.
Yeah.
Larry Chisner's been putting this on for years. It is an awesome show, awesome venue.
It's indoors.
Yeah,
That's
and
nice.
it's also challenging too because that dome does some funky stuff to your sound.
I've heard people say,
So yeah, it's challenging for that reason, but it's just such a well put together show. Such a great judging crew that they have out there. You get multiple competition organizations. You get a big money round that brings in another 6 to 8 quality judges. It's just awesome. It really is. Larry has done a great job with that. The Atlanta show also is excellent from the same standpoint that you get a lot of judging feedback, multiple organizations, prize rounds, things like that. The venue itself, though, I don't really think you can beat SVR.
yeah.
I would love if we did finals there. Actually, plenty of space in there. You got the casino across the street, some good food. There's always live music over there. It's good times.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the record, I've never been to SBR. So I assume that if I had been,
That's
my
a problem. We got to fix that.
I know it, man. I was actually thinking about going this year, but I say that every year. I can't lie. And then the Aggie Land show. I've never been to that, which all of my friends that go to that say it's a wonderful show. I don't know that you can. I can only talk about the ones I've been to. So competition for me, Atlanta, but Jason Bartholomew's meet. I actually would prioritize, personally speaking, I would prioritize that over anything per year. But that,
Yeah, I guess I should say I've not been to Chris Pate's show down there in Aggie Land, and I do hear great things about that as well.
yeah,
I would love to get down there. It's like
dude.
over 24 hours drive
Yeah, I was gonna
for
say
me. So
it's 12 or 13 for me, so I can't imagine how far it is for you.
yeah, it's a long ways.
But hear us complaining, those California guys are like, "Shut up! We drive like 3 days to go to finals, so we shouldn't complain, right?"
Yeah, no, I mean we're lucky that we do have awesome events here in the States and plenty of them up and down the East Coast.
Yeah,
So
that's cool. What is this?
can
Okay,
you touch on the benefits
I can't touch nobody.
of of driver size for mid-range, mid-bass, and subs? Benefits of the size of the drivers? Yeah, sure. There's a couple of things to consider. I think directivity is one that Aaron would probably talk about as well.
Uh,
Is the larger the driver size and the higher you intend to play it, directivity becomes an issue.
mhm.
So let's talk about mid-range, for example. If I have a 3-inch mid-range or I have a 6-inch mid-range, like what we see behind me here, um, the ability of those drivers to play higher, both on axis and off axis, that's going to be challenging for a larger driver versus a small. So it depends on how high you want them to be able to play, depends on how low you want them to be able to play, depends on the qualities of the drivers themselves. If for example, let's say I've got a 3-inch mid-range and I want to play a pass band of 200 hertz to 4K. In many 3-inch drivers, you can do that. They can play that high, and you won't have issues with the off-axis sound being very rolled off as compared to the on-axis sound. On the bottom end, with a 3-inch playing down to 200 hertz, for many of those size drivers, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge, especially as the volume requirements get higher and higher. So yeah, it really is kind of a play on what size is going to fit your needs for volume output, the crossover range, and the full pass band you want it to play. And then if directivity is going to be an issue, there's different schools of thought to that as well. There's people out there who prescribe to the wideband school of thinking, where they want to play as many octaves through one speaker as they can, because they feel that crossovers in the vocal region are a problem. I don't subscribe to that school of thought. I don't think that's an issue as long as you set up the speakers, do the install and the tuning properly. I don't think there's an issue with crossovers being in the vocal range. I think it presents a lot of other issues when you do decide to run a speaker for multiple octaves and higher than it really is designed to play.
Yeah.
A couple of those being, again, the directivity thing. The sound off axis is going to be very different from the sound on axis. I'll let Aaron tell you why that's problematic in a second.
No, that's fine.
But another reason is breakup. All speakers are going to break up. It just depends on where that's going to happen and how badly. And when you take a paper cone driver and run it really high, you're going to have breakup. If you take a speaker with a very stiff cone, like an aluminum cone, you're going to have breakup as well. It's just going to be much worse. So breakup is definitely an issue. You're going to have distortion higher if you run a speaker like that. So
yeah. Actually, I think that's a really solid answer. Sorry. Well, I like what somebody said here. Oh, Billy, this was actually, to me, this is, I mean, if you're trying to make it succinct, this is it.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, truly, that's really what it boils down to. And I agree with you about, I don't necessarily like, I'm not saying that wideband setups are bad. A lot of them sound great. I've heard plenty of them that sound great. But for the same thing, people like them, they want a problem. For not having to use a crossover, you can also create more issues by having, especially when they're not well behaved off axis, they create more issues than they help. And then the other thing too is the closer you run it to FS, this is something that I'm dealing with more and more, is intramodulated distortion. So the more you try to move a speaker cone and play higher frequency, the more distortion you get. And IMD, intermodulated distortion, is actually a pretty bad thing. It comes off as very grainy. And so I would generally say that that's why we want to use segmented speakers, like, a dedicated three-way or something like that. Split up those crossover regions, keep a speaker playing from too far or too broad of a range, especially on the low end. But no, your answer is, I like your answer. That's good.
So, for example, if we have a 6.5 and, we're playing 45 or 50 hertz through that thing, and we're also playing, mid-range and high frequencies through it at the same time.
Right.
Are they going to be, intelligible? Are they going to sound like separate sounds? Are they going to sound like they should, or is there going to be distortion because of us running that close to FS?
Exactly. Yeah. And in some of my more recent tests, that's kind of what I put a focus on, is driving the speaker at FS, but then also showing what it looks like when you cross it at 80. And you can see a big difference on some of the more budget-minded speakers, drive units, where you have them playing at FS, and then you have them playing at 80 hertz, and then the mid-range is a whole lot more clean when it's crossed at 80 hertz versus when it's playing near FS. And that goes to show you not just what IMD does in terms of distortion to the sound, but what separates the very good drivers from the drivers that aren't very good, And when you're talking about wide bandwidth, Audio Frog GB25 to me is a good example of a speaker that will play low and high, and it costs more money than, what is it? I don't know, $400 or $500 a pair. I can't remember now. But they're quite a bit more costly as opposed to $30 wideband speakers, but they're a lot more effective in a smaller package. So just something to throw out there. Now, this is my brother-in-law threw me $5. I got a shout out to my brother.
Hey.
I'm rich.
Way to go. Keeping it in the family. I like it.
Dude, that's right. It's out cousins here. Oh, and George. Sweet. I appreciate that. I'm not even asking for anything. You guys are throwing stuff our way. I guess I'm going to have to give Steve some of this money too. Dadgummit. I'm going to start doing my own stuff now.
Oh, well, wait, I'm getting a cut of this?
I guess so. I'll have to
keep it coming, people. Keep it coming. Let's go.
Pay for that Similac. Oh, okay. What else we got in here? Agilent is great. Yes, sir.
Hey, Ryan. so Ryan Catroni had asked the question here.
Is it this one?
Yeah. What's the most common use of an all-pass filter in a single-seat car? Where would you find the most use for an all-pass filter in a single-seat car?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not using an all-pass filter, a dedicated one. You could use one in the mid-range. I see that because especially at that point where the wavelength begins to equal the width of the car, which is almost always in that 300 hertz region. I could see you probably using one effectively there and helping to calm some issues. And that's something that I intended to look into a little bit further. What I wanted to do last year was to measure the car and tune it fully with measurement process. Not using any ear stuff. Just looking at the phase, using my variable phase and all that stuff. But I never got around to it. Matter of fact, when I had everything dialed in the way I thought it was going to sound good, I got in. I was like, well, this is not right. So it takes. I don't know. I don't think it's as easy as just looking at a screen, making adjustments based on that. You really have to get in and listen and try to understand what adjustments you're making in real time.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes what you're measuring doesn't always correlate to what you hear.
Right.
So it's always good to get in, put your ears in there, and make sure that what you're hearing sounds right. Sometimes you're going to need to use those. I don't use all pass filters very often, very rare cases in a single seat car. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
You have two-seat car, a little bit of a different story.
Yeah. And I'll say even kind of going along with that is if you trust only measurements and I'm a measurement dude. I mean, everybody knows I love data. But if you look at that 80 hertz null, that's typical in a car. I keep coming back to it because it's a good example. Some people will look at that and think, okay, well, there's a huge dip there. So I need to boost it. Well, first of all, never do that. But second of all, you're thinking there's a huge dip there and it's going to sound low and level. But when you get in and listen, it actually stands out. Your ear is drawn to that mid bass. And that is confusing because you're thinking it's showing a dip in response. I should hear it lower level, but it's actually louder because the phase is off and it's drawn right to that speaker. So it's actually louder and level. And that's something that unless you listen to the car, you're not going to understand. So you're going to do some stuff and it's probably not going to sound right. And you have to figure out why by listening to it. All right.
Shannon Price, $5, man. Thank you for the donation to
Yeah.
Aaron's cause over here.
Yeah, I
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, sir. Let's see here. I live in Hawaii near your shop. Somebody lives in Hawaii near your shop.
I like Billy's response here to Jay, because you'll separate the cone from the coil and surround in 10-degree weather and below.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's problematic.
Yeah. No, you don't want to do that. Let's see. Mark Brooks has got another one. With today's technology and DSPs, do you feel the path link? No, I don't. That's not for one seat cars. Absolutely not. I do not. I think you can still benefit from having similar path links, but as far as getting things lined up and stuff like that, not really. I think what's more important is not just the path link, but the angles. I think the angles are more important than the path link. I think if you could, and it goes back to that example I made earlier about having the left side of your speakers or left side speakers are at 10 to 15 degrees or 20 degrees off axis, while your right side is 50 degrees off axis. So a huge difference in the angles. I would think that if you could get the angles the same, then who cares what the differences in actual distance is, because you can adjust that with time delay and just make the signal fire at a different time. But that's one man's opinion. What about you? What do you got?
I kind of agree with you, man. I mean, in a perfect world, you want the system to be set up, the install to be as perfect as it can be before you even do any sort of, DSP tweaking to the sound. But yeah, of course, it's made us lazy.
Yeah.
But it's a convenience, it makes things a lot easier to set up, and you can get a great result.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Would I prefer to have equal path lengths going in versus having to do it with a DSP? Sure, but it's not realistic in most vehicles to get there. You're always going to have some kind of a difference there.
Right. I agree. Yeah, I just think that, because I've seen people still will talk about path link differences, and I don't think it's important as it used to be, not with DSP. You can make a lot of those things up. Now, certainly there's going to be issues with reflections and how things are symmetrically placed. But as far as trying to get a center stage and stuff like that, you can do a whole lot with a DSP that you couldn't do before.
That said, one thing I will say that I think is important is getting your mid-range and tweeter as close together as possible in the vehicle.
I agree with that. I think that's very important, even though my car doesn't do that, but I prioritized the install, the function, I guess, of the car over the sound of this particular vehicle because I've done all the crazy stuff before. So, but I do agree. You can certainly separate your mid bass from your mid range further than you can your tweeter from your mid range. I think you really miss that sense of cohesion, and that's one of those things too where I don't think you notice it until you've heard it. You know, if you could really A B the difference between your speaker being 2 feet away from your tweeter versus being concentrically mounted, I think then you would hear the difference. But until you can A B them, it's hard to understand what that means.
I mean, that's one thing where I would say, where Mark, I think he's alluding to part of that as well is, and I've experienced this in my own vehicle, when I had mid-range and tweeter separated by, 8 to 12 inches, all the tuning I did, like I could get great sound out of it. But once I got them right next to each other as close as possible, I was able to get more cohesive sound regardless of how much tuning I did in either scenario. So I think it is important.
That's the one thing I really liked about those Kefs when I ran them was just the sound stage seemed to be much more cohesive than anything I've had. But then I still had other issues with that. So it's just, man, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So
I mean, you could say the same thing when you take it out of the car environment altogether. Look at the home environment. There's reasons why speaker designers don't put, 3 feet of space between a tweeter and a mid-range. They put them as close as possible so there's no lobing issues. And
well, that's the crazy thing too. Like in my home speaker testing, I've seen more people pay more attention to the center to center spacing of the mid to the tweeter. But then I go and look at other designs that I'm not, I mean, they're like $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 speakers that will have like, I don't know, I mean, literally a foot between the tweeter and the mid range. And you're like, why? We know, and it's not just being an objectivist, from doing this for years that there's a problem there, and they still do that. And well, we know why. It's because of looks and it sells, but specifically talking about like Wilson audio speakers, which I don't know if everybody knows what I'm talking about here, but yeah, I don't know. It's just some weird stuff.
Jay, thanks for the support. Mark too. Ron Baker.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for supporting the channel here for
Dude, done. I'm just gonna go blow all this money, and I'm never coming back to this. Mark, Jay, Ron, man, certainly appreciate that. You guys are awesome, man. I'll try to give you an example here real fast of Wilson Audio, just for because I know some of the car guys don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff. Share screen. Oh, I have to move over here. Share. All right. Can you guys see this stuff? I mean, look.
There we go.
There's a tweeter, there's a mid, and there's another mid, and these look like two different sizes, but here's a main offender. I mean, that's a 6, probably 6.5. Looks like even a Satori possibly, and maybe a Vifa. I'm not sure. But if you take that as a 6.5 or even a 5-inch, you're at least 5, 6, 7 inches away separation. I mean, yeah, you're going to hear that kind of thing if you're able to A/B that versus a concentrically mounted speaker. So anyway, just a side note there. Do it. What else we got here?
Do it.
Guys, I appreciate the donation, man. That's awesome. I really do.
A lot of love tonight.
Yeah, a lot of love. We love you. Long time. Apicella. Oh, he's talking about Andy. Blah, blah, blah. I love Wilson audio speakers. My favorite. Oh, crap. Ron, you can't have your $20 back, man. Sorry. You want to give it. I will say this, though. I listened to them at the Hi-Fi Buys in Tennessee on some Mac stuff, and I'm a sucker for Mac stuff. And, I mean, it sounded awesome, but you just know that there's certain compromises being made. And I would be curious to know why they make those choices. If it's not aesthetics, is there a sound reason why they do that as well?
So speaking of speakers that you've tested, so the one sitting here, there we go. Let me see if I can get that camera up there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, does that work? There we go.
Yes.
I think we've identified that I have a camera that looks like it was produced in 1980, but
yeah, you're using Windows Millennium Edition as well.
It's bizarre. I've got like a laptop that was built like this year, and it just looks like crap. That's awesome. But that is the The Purify 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
The one next to it is the actually the Acoustic Elegance TD6M, which I don't think have tested yet.
Yeah, I think you verified for me that I did not test.
Yeah. But I was reading your measurements and report on that, and that driver, I'm not surprised that it tested as well as it did based on the way it sounds. Pretty killer speaker.
It's really impressive because I got that with the Sela Audio Impreza, Pureza. I always say Impreza. Actually, I don't even know what it's called anymore, but it's something like that. And
Maybe you secretly want to own a Subaru. Is that what it is?
that's what it is. I was thinking, I'm pretty sure that's a car, Aaron. But yeah, that's what it is. I listened to those, and the distortion on those in the mid range was like, I don't know. I can't say distortion was low because it wasn't there. The mid range just sounded super clean. And when I saw the data, I said, oh, that's why. I mean, it's the lowest mid range distortion I think I've measured. With it still having a lot of linear throw. I mean, so far it's only behind the scan by like the scan illuminator by maybe like 1 millimeter, 1.5, if that. Now there's another company. It's not Motu, but they're somewhat new, and somebody's linked me to them before. Billy may remember, but they've come out recently, and they've got Clipple verified 10 millimeters one way excursion with 6.5-inch drive unit. So
Wow.
they're pretty beefy. I don't think those are going to fit in a car door.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not, but I would be.
Need a little space for that kind of travel.
Yeah, you probably do.
Yeah, what's impressive about those the Purify though is that they play, like you said, they can play down into the bass region while simultaneously playing very clean through the mid range as well. And that's something that, we see plenty of speakers that have a lot of linear throw and can play, bass in a two-way well or bass in a three-way well, but how excellent are they still going to sound in that mid-range area while doing that? So
Right.
pretty impressive what that thing's doing.
Yeah, I agree. That's a pretty cool speaker. Nick, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Love. Ian. Well, thank you, sir.
What's up, Ian? Been a long time.
Ian, appreciate that. What do we think future holds for the industry? Oh God, I don't know anything about the industry, man. You were asking the person here.
It's hard to say, really. I think that if you look at the younger generation, they're listening to crap through their earbuds that came through their iPhones. So, do they really value quality sound, and do they want quality sound in their vehicles? It doesn't seem that way to me. I don't really see that trend. I think car audio is still going to be a very niche market, and it's going to be a lot of us old guys and the occasional younger audiophiles who want to put something in their vehicle. But and it's also, vehicles are coming with better sound systems than they did 20 years ago. I think there's a lot more design going into them. Again, we can go back to our buddy Natan. He's one of the guys out there pioneering good sound in vehicles, designing good sounding systems. So, between stock cars coming with decent stock systems, the young people not really caring about excellent hi-fi sound, and then the integration piece being more and more difficult as vehicles get smarter.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think it's looking great for the industry as a whole as we proceed, but I guess we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I don't really have any input from the industry side of things. I mean, I guess looking at the car auto competition side of things, I mean, it seems like it's grown pretty steadily the past few years, but who's to say that that's not going to take a dip, next or this coming year with 2021, COVID aside. But yeah, and then, I know people, just talking to people at work, I'll somehow mention that I'm into car audio, and they'll say, oh, well, my car's got, all this stuff in it. I doubt there's no way or any way that you can easily, upgrade the stereo in it. And most of the time I would think that they're probably right without spending hundreds of dollars more, to get rid of the OEM integration or just to match up with it or somehow. But Nick would probably be a good person to ask that question too.
Yeah, Nick, you hear the question, so why don't you type a response?
Yeah, Nick, type a response and we'll throw it here. Nick, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Well, I put it toward a laser. We'll see. Actually, let me show you what I want to put it toward. I'm working hard on making this thing happen.
Nice.
Where did it go?
Nick must be doing well with that shop of his up there
Let's
with
see.
that quality donation there. I like it.
This is what I'm trying to get, everybody. I know that my cardio folks probably don't really know what this is, but basically, this is a robotic, fully automated way to measure a drive unit, but also a speaker on a infinite baffle like this. So if I could get something like this, we're talking big leagues. Now this thing rates, what does it go for? About 100K, all said and done. And I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm working on making it happen, because if it does, then I can do a lot more, a lot less time, and it will be a lot more accurate. I mean, it takes me like 10 hours to measure a single loudspeaker right now. Oh my god, dude! And especially like in the summertime. Oh, I'm not kidding, dude. Last summer I was out there. I had to wait until 9 p.m. at night just for it to be cool enough, and I was still sweating my butt off running back and forth between the speaker to spin it, because I've spin it 10 degrees and in increments for a loudspeaker. Luckily for a drive unit, it's not that hard to do though. So, but anyway, yeah, Nick, dude, I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're a crazy wild man with that stuff.
I enjoy it. It's fun, man. You know, I figure put my passion to some kind of use. Let's see here. Younger generation may not even own a vehicle. That may be true. I don't know. Around my area, the younger generation has a bunch of redneck pickup trucks. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, I agree with him 100% there, because I work with a number of them and they don't have vehicles. So, yeah,
Yeah. All right. Let's see here.
they're going to Uber. They're just going to want to Bluetooth into the Uber. So,
Yeah, that's funny. All right. Thank you, Nick. I misread that, but I appreciate the kudos or whatever.
Julian, nice. That's Canadian though. Is that like about, what is that, about 350? Is
Yeah,
that how, what's the conversion on that? Is it about $3.50?
$3.50. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
Busting your stones there, Julian. You're the man.
I would rather a selfie of him without a shirt on, but you know, I'll take 50
Yeah,
bucks.
you got to watch what you ask for with this guy, because he'll
No,
do it.
trust me, I know. I already have it in my private messages on Facebook right now. Much love, much love. All right, let's see here. Yeah, no, it was actually almost 65 degrees today. It was beautiful, but then it's supposed to rain tonight and get cold again. So, and I've got the test, and part of my testing that I want to do, I got some SBS subwoofers, and I want to do some is speaker break in a thing, because people say that it isn't, and it absolutely is, but the problem is to what degree? Like tweeters, subwoofers, yeah, you know. So I would like to try to do some kind of studies to show people that it depends. I think the question is always yes, but it depends is the second tier portion of that answer.
You know what I would like to see along those lines is speaker out of the box measurements and how it performs.
Yeah,
Speaker after playing for a while, where it's been warm, it's been broken in for a long time,
right.
and then allow the speaker to cool again for a day or two, and then play it
Yeah.
after being totally cool again, and then kind of see the difference between those three.
Well, so that's actually kind of what I'm wanting to do with the break-in. So I want to do TS, you know, straight out of the box, and then break it in, hit it with some high power signal for a while. You know, I don't know how long, and then test it again, and keep testing and testing, which is what I do for all my other tests until you reach a point of stasis, I guess. But I want to be able to show that data, because I never collected it in real time to actually go back and show people. But one thing I can tell you that matters is compression, man. When you start feeding a speaker that can't, you know, doesn't effectively cool the voice coil, that speaker starts to suffer compression issues. What do we got here? Nick, hold on, Geo. George, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. You guys are awesome. All right, what else?
Aaron's got some serious hardware over there. Audio hardware as well.
Yeah,
That's why
chastity belt a while back.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. When you first pulled up that picture with looked like some sort of robotic car, I didn't know what you were getting into.
Dungeons, man.
Yeah. Do you have space for that in the basement? I don't even know. How does one get that in the car? Do they ship those like confidentially? What do they put on the label?
They airdrop them to you. They airdrop them to you. Oh man. All right, we got another one from Mark. What is our reference for sound? Oh man. Steve, do you have a reference for sound?
For me, it's live music for sure. I go to a lot of concerts. I've heard people talk about, well, amplified stuff, that's not reference, or the live music, whether that's in a coffee shop with one dude playing a guitar, or you know, you're at a concert hall and it's a symphony, or you're out and it's a rock concert and everything's amplified to hell. I mean,
Yeah.
the reference is really the live music for me in whatever setting that is. And then yeah, I mean, I've listened to many amazing high end speakers, and you can get really close to that, which is great. But for me, it's definitely the live music.
Yeah. Uh, yes. The answer to this question is yes. I've never used the Dumac stuff, but I've heard of it. And from what I understand, it was basically like the only option you had before Clipple came out. And they coincided. I don't know if Dumax is still around or not, though. Let's see here. Some of the old Hangout Pioneer Clipple. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Clipple. Okay. All right. Man, you got anything on here? I know you got a kiddo, and my kiddo is just playing games, so she don't care what I'm doing. But if you got a bell out, we can shut her down. But if you got a few more seconds, I can find a couple of questions that people asked.
Sure. Yeah, we got a couple more minutes.
A couple more. All right. Let me pull up this Facebook real fast. I'll pull on Facebook real fast. Tell you right now. Man. Oh, somebody asked what you were doing for the transit in 2021. Let me go back to that. And I'm sure I missed other questions. So if anybody had a question that we missed, feel free to retype it. I'm trying to manage this.
Yeah, it's always a good question. I don't usually know what I'm doing with the transit in the next like 3 months, because I always have stuff going on,
Yeah.
always things like floating around in the noggin that I want to try.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm working on doing some rebuilding in the back. I don't know that I'm going to be doing too much competition um, in 2021. I'd like to get out and support the show at SVR for Larry. He's a good friend. So hopefully, COVID slows down or takes a hike, and the vaccine works, and we're able to get out there and do the competition thing in 2021. Um, as you said, I've got a 1-year-old now running around, so life has changed a little bit for me.
Yeah.
And we're expecting a little girl in the end of May. So yeah, thank you. So yeah, things are going to get even a little bit crazier around here. So as far as the transit, it's not on ice. I'm always doing something with it. Actually, you had mentioned it was nice and warm over there today. I had on my garage heater and my kerosene heater in the garage, so I could do some fiberglass work. So
Oh, fiberglass work.
yeah, doing making some fiberglass dust, making some things happen. So having some fun in some downtime here before the holiday. So yeah, playing with some things. I'm going to try some of these speakers that you see behind me
Yeah.
and see what those do. Playing around with some of the old autosynthesis stuff as well, which has always been a favorite of mine since I've heard it in Jason Bartholomew's car. I'm still kind of sad that he doesn't have that one. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I've always loved those speakers. So I'm going to play around with those a little bit as well.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
You'll have to keep us abreast of your situation. Well, here's one that I think this was on Facebook, but I think we kind of answered this one earlier with Jason's question about past bands and stuff like that. So I think we're good there. And then there was another one somebody asked. I'll throw it up here. And I feel like maybe we kind of answered this one. How do you test so that you come to a decision? Yeah, I mean, you answered that with what your whole setup is behind you. Oh, what do you think will be the next fad in car audio? I don't know, man. I don't keep up with fads.
Yeah, no, that's
I'll
tough.
even,
I mean, the other thing I didn't mention with the testing part is I use a mechanical switcher as well. So I kind of sit up here in my audio room and I get whatever speakers I'm going to be testing, and
yeah,
I'll put them on a switcher so they're all using the same amp channels and power. Everything's level matched. And then I just use a switcher to kind of go back and forth between things, which is helpful for me to be
yeah.
able to hear differences.
Do you do like ABX at all, or you just? I mean, you kind of know what you're picking, unfortunately. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, with speakers, it's it's really easy to tell, as you know. Like speakers are probably the highest distortion device you're going to have in a
Right.
in a system. So with speakers, it's very easy to hear those differences.
So here's
If
one
we're
for you. People, because I've had people ask me this, well, do you subjectively test, raw drivers? And the answer for me is no, because there's so many variables. And I mean, for instance, if I test one raw 6.5 inch mid woofer and another one, well, they may be completely different. One may be more well suited for mid bass and have a different high frequency roll off than the other one. And so, how do you test that fairly? You can't just throw a tweeter on both of them with the same crossover slopes, because then you're not designing around the speaker as a whole, And so I don't do that. So I'm curious, like when you're doing that, do you do that same kind of thing? Do you try to integrate a tweeter into it, as well as you possibly can between each setup, or are you listening to just the 6.5 inch?
So I do a couple of things. I like to let's say a mid range, for example, like what I've got behind me. I know the general pass band that I'm probably going to end up using a speaker like that in, but I'll listen to a mid range. Now you can't do this with a tweeter, obviously,
Mhm.
and you probably wouldn't want to do it with something like a subwoofer. But I'll listen to it full range a little bit to kind of hear what it's doing outside the pass band.
Yeah,
um, then I'll keep it in that specific pass band, and I will use it with a mid bass and a tweeter, um, so I can kind of hear what it does with the other drivers that I'm potentially going to use along with it.
yeah, okay,
Yeah, I think it's always good to kind of pair those things together and hear how they complement each other.
right, right. I agree. All right, so here's one. Do you have an easy answer for this? I don't know.
Yeah.
I've made so many mistakes. I don't know if I can tell you a biggest one.
Well, I've never caught anything on fire. So thankfully there's that. I mean,
That's
there's still time. I've got a lot of years. Well, I'll probably still be putzing around with this stuff. But hopefully I don't do that. Worst mistake, geez, I don't know. As far as putting a car together, yeah, I don't know. Probably trying to do something myself that I should have taken up to Nick's shop to do.
well, I was actually going to say the same thing. For me, it's if you value time over money, as you start to. So, like, I think most people, like you and I, when you start off in this hobby, you're younger, you're fresh out of college, you don't have as much money, so you're doing everything you can by yourself the best you can. And I mean, I look back at installs and stuff I did on my own car 10, 15 years ago, and I'm like, holy crap, it's a wonder that the car actually made it out of the driveway when I was finished. But now that I've have less personal time and a little bit more income, I'm luckily able to take it to Steve Cook, who's only like an hour from me, and to have him do it. And there's been times where I thought, man, I should have just done that to begin with. So I don't know that it's a mistake. You learn a lot by doing this stuff. And without me, having a lot of failure, especially when it comes to tuning, doing stupid stuff like staying up all night tuning your car before a big show the next day and waking up the next morning and driving to the event and being like, oh my God, what did I do? Like, this is
Yeah.
terrible. And you're trying to, like, you pull over and try to tune it before you get there. But yeah, I don't know, man. There's been a lot
I'm,
of little mistakes. I can't think of many of them though.
yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not like an Apicella auto sound where I've got
Yeah.
multiple cars in the bay all the time, and I have more opportunities to do something stupid because I would, I'm sure. I only work on usually one car at a time, at most two. I try not to do that because I like my wife, and I prefer not to get divorced. So she
Yeah.
puts up with me, thankfully.
Well, I
But
can tell you
yeah, no,
one thing that I did in my old car was sound deadener, that asphalt stuff on the back of it. I've had that get on my clothes and not paid attention, and then get on the interior. I mean, that's just stuff like that. Like not paying attention to what you're doing, kind of things. That's got me in the butt a few times. And my other car, it was a tan interior, so that showed up easily. Let's see here. Somebody was asking about your amps. What amps are you using in the background?
oh yeah, the amps you see behind me are they're Genesis amplifiers. That's what I'm using in my demo room up here. Have had them for years. I've used them in my car before. Um, awesome, love them. They're great for testing. They're great for listening in the car as well. So
Yeah.
that's what's floating around back there.
All right. mid base enclosures in the doors. I've never built door enclosures. I would say that if I were going to go that route, I would probably just go with kicks. But what do you got? Any thoughts there? Have you ever built door enclosures?
Look, like I'll be one of the first to say that I hate doing stuff indoors. I know that we have to do it in cars because not every car is going to be appropriate for a very custom install.
Right.
Doors present a lot of problems outside of just airspace.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
resonances are extremely difficult to eliminate in a door.
Dude, even in
And
the best of installs, I mean, you still get resonances in the panel itself. Even if you fill in that void, I mean, there's just all sorts of issues with doors. And mine are mounted in the doors right now, and I think I've got them about as good as you possibly can. But the door itself is so flimsy. The door panel itself is so flimsy. I mean, it just with certain tracks, dude, it just lights up the door panels, and it's aggravating. And you just have to go to the next song.
dude, even one of the best cars in competition for many, many, many years has used mid basses in the doors. And when you get on the volume, even in that thing, you get, some resonance in the doors. And we're talking about a car that's won crazy number of championships. So, if the best of the best can't get rid of that, that's always going to be a problem. That's just a compromise of using door locations. Um, as far as building an enclosure in there, me personally, no, I don't think that juice is worth the squeeze, as they say. You have to do an awful lot of work to do.
That's what I would
Um, yeah, there's a whole lot of work that has to go in just to get that sealed enclosure volume, and then you still have those other drawbacks of using a door to deal with.
I mean, how do you
So
like? I see people talk about that, and I'm thinking in most cars. I mean, granted, I haven't seen every single car door, but in most cars, I can't imagine that you can effectively build an enclosure behind the factory mounted location and be able to roll your window down.
yeah, I mean, and like I'll see some people where they'll build out from the surface of the door. They'll take off the stock panel. They'll build a new panel. Like that's probably the best way to do it all custom. So it's really solid. You don't have any sort of flimsy plastic.
Yeah,
But even when you do it that way, you're still going to be making your doors 60 pounds and putting that sort of stress on the hinges. You're still going to have resonances in the panel. And then what's the main benefit of doing it? So you're going to have a speaker that requires an airspace small enough, right? You're still, how much airspace do you expect to get when you're doing a sealed enclosure on a door? Are you going to get better performance with that versus, building a door solid and just using it pseudo infinite baffle?
right.
I don't think it's worth it to do that. And all the time you put into that, if it's going to be something like a competition vehicle, I don't think the normal everyday Joe who's going to put a speaker in a door is thinking about doing sealed enclosures. I think that's more for someone who's thinking competition or very custom. And if you're going to go that route, then why not do what's going to perform better, which is a kick panel anyway?
Yeah, and
So
you were talking about door mid-based enclosure. So Gary Summers is somebody who I thought of. He's got the actual enclosure, and to me, that's a solution. That's something I could see me having done, but I wouldn't build it myself because I don't have the skill. Definitely don't have the time anymore. But that might, if I were going to do door enclosures, I'd probably be the only way I would do it is if it is somehow completely isolated from the door, but rigidly mounted to it. You know what I mean? Not, I'd say completely isolated, but mounted, but I guess isolated from the door panel and rigidly mounted to the door skin, like the metal of the door. But I'm sure other people who are better at this than me can do something like that. But
yeah, I mean, the other thing to consider with that question is like just choose a better speaker for the application too. You know, are you going to choose a speaker that requires, a sealed airspace and then have to build all this crazy stuff so that it has the proper airspace? Or can you just get a speaker that works really well in an infinite baffle type of scenario like a door really kind of is?
right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I would just use a better driver for the application instead of trying to change the application into just a kind of a poor way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can it be done? Yes, it can be done. But again, there's always compromises.
I know I
So
want to, and I think what Nick is saying here is that he did it and it was a pain in the butt, and I can only imagine. Yeah, because I don't even like putting stuff. I don't even like the effort of installing speakers indoors and just having to run the wire through the grommet. So I definitely am out on building enclosures. Now I actually had a friend a long time ago who had a periodic membranes built into his door enclosures. He was a machinist, so he CNC'd up like the hollow tube basically, mounted into a Civic, and then had an AP mat behind them and could tune the enclosure. That way, it didn't hit the window when you rolled the window down, and they were actually mounted behind the stock panel. There was no cutting of the stock panel, so it was crazy. But I don't remember how great it sounded. I just remember thinking, "Holy crap, that's a lot of work." But anyway, I know you got to run. I'd probably need to get off here too. So we're going to shut it down here. I want to say, first of all, thank you, my friend, for joining me. This is actually really fun. I had a good time, and thanks to everybody for jumping on here, and certainly folks for donating a couple bucks. That's unexpected and appreciated. So I really do appreciate that.
bravo to all you guys for donating to the channel. So Aaron can keep doing what he does here. We all appreciate the efforts, and always awesome to talk to you, my friend.
Yeah,
Talking audio, I mean, I could just talk audio for hours
yeah,
anyway.
yep.
So,
I agree. Talking with a good friend makes it even sweeter, especially one who looks as pretty as you.
oh shucks.
All right. All right, bro. Well, I guess you get back to your fam. Tell everybody we said what's up, and we'll see you again soon.
Sounds good, my friend. Happy New Year to everybody out there. Be safe, and I look forward to seeing you guys all out at the next shows and get-togethers.
All right. Yep. Ditto. All right. Take care, everybody.